The protectors' arrival started on a quiet morning over the city of New York. The sky was blue and peaceful. People were going to work, children were getting ready for school. No one expected anything strange, but then it happened. A giant silver ship appeared above the city. It did not make a sound. It did not shake the ground. It just floated in the air like it had always been there. Within minutes, another ship appeared over London. Then one over Tokyo, then another over Moscow. Soon there were ships over every major city on Earth. They were all the same shape, like long ovals made of silver glass. They had no weapons, no markings. Just silent shadows in the sky. At first people thought it was a prank or some kind of experiment. But then the ships moved in perfect harmony. They formed circles above each city and began to glow softly. That glow sent a strange feeling through the air. People felt calm but also scared. Something unnatural was happening. Suddenly every screen in the world turned black. Phones, TVs, and computers all stopped working. Then a single voice spoke. It was deep, smooth, and echoed in every language. Every person on Earth understood it at the same time. We are the Council of Nine. We have come to protect Earth. That was all. No explanation. No warning. No answer to the biggest question of all: protect us from what? Governments reacted fast. Fighter jets were sent into the skies, but they could not get close to the ships. The ships were surrounded by invisible energy fields. Missiles failed. Lasers failed. Nothing could touch them. It was clear the Council of Nine did not want to be harmed, but also did not want to harm anyone. Within days, giant towers began to rise from the ground. They were not built by humans. Strange machines built them overnight. These towers stood tall and silent in the middle of cities and deserts. In the ocean, strange devices dropped into the water. Satellite images disappeared and were replaced by new alien ones. It was as if Earth was being scanned and reprogrammed. World leaders demanded answers. Protests filled the streets. People wanted to know what was happening. The council gave no reply except the same message: we are here for your protection. 10 days. After the first ship appeared, a global meeting was called in Geneva. Every major leader was there. The council sent one representative. He arrived through a tall circular gate that opened like light itself. The alien was tall, with pale white skin and eyes that glowed blue. His face looked human, but not fully. He wore no armor, no weapon, only a simple long robe that shimmered like metal. He walked slowly to the center of the room where all the leaders were seated. Cameras were rolling. The whole world was watching. President Clark from the United States stood up. She looked calm, but her voice was sharp. You say you are here to protect us, but we want to know, who are you protecting us from? The alien did not blink. He looked at her with a soft smile. Not who, he said. What? The room went silent. Whispers moved across the hall. What did that mean? The alien continued in a calm voice. There is something coming to your world, something old. Something that does not speak. It does not think like you. It only consumes. We have seen it before. It is not far. Your planet is not ready. The leaders asked more questions. Where is it coming from? How much time do we have? Why now? But the alien gave no more answers. He only said, your kind is special. You survive, you grow, you fight when all others fall. We will protect that. And then he vanished in a blink of light. That night, all across Earth, the lights went out. Entire cities fell into darkness. Power grids stopped working. Backup systems failed. Planes landed without control. People screamed, some prayed. Others looked to the sky hoping to see the ships. But the ships were gone, only the towers remained, and they began to hum. Hum was deep and powerful. Like something waking up. People thought it was the end, but it was only the beginning. The silent sky. The world stayed in darkness for 3 full days. No power, no internet, no signals, only silence and fear across every city. People lit candles and used old radios to talk to each other. Families sat close together, waiting for something to happen. Food started to rot. Water supplies began to fail, but no one could explain why. Even the sun looked different, weaker, as if the sky itself was tired in the way. Middle of all this silence, the alien towers began to change. The smooth metal outside started glowing, slowly pulsing like a heartbeat. Some people got closer to see what was happening. Others stayed far away, too afraid to trust anything made by creatures they never invited. The towers were alive, but no one knew what they were doing at a secret base in Greenland. A team of scientists had managed to power up an old satellite. They used it to scan the upper atmosphere, and what they found was terrifying. A massive invisible field had surrounded Earth. No object could leave, not even light. It was like the planet had been sealed inside a prison of energy, and no one could see what was outside. General Ross, the man in charge of Earth defense forces, watched the data in silence. His eyes were heavy. He had served during the lunar conflict and the Martian uprising. But this felt different. This felt like being caged with no door, no key, and no guard to talk to. He turned to Dr. Lin, the lead scientist, and asked the only question that mattered. Did they trap us, or are they trapping something else outside? Dr. Lin did not answer. She just stared at the screen. The reading showed a strange pattern beyond the energy wall. Something massive was moving at the edge of the solar system, slow but steady, like a wave of darkness coming closer. Not a ship, not a fleet, something that had no shape and no end. Back on Earth, in a small village in Africa, a boy named Tay stood near one of the towers. He was just 13, but he felt something no one else did. When he touched the tower, he heard a voice, not in words, but in feeling. The tower was speaking to him in a way he could not explain. It showed him flashes of stars burning out, planets crumbling, screams in space, and a dark cloud eating everything in its path. Tay told his grandfather, who thought the boy had dreamed too much. But when the tower started to move, the old man believed him. Its base opened slowly, revealing a spiral staircase going down into the Earth. Guards came quickly, trying to block people from entering, but Tay had already stepped inside. Underground, he found a room filled with lights and shapes floating in the air like stars trapped in glass. At the center was a chair, and without thinking, Tay sat on it. The tower reacted instantly, glowing brighter. The hum became louder, and suddenly screens across the planet flickered back to life for a moment. People saw his face on every device, a child sitting inside an alien tower, looking calm, looking ready. And then the lights went out again. In Geneva, President Clark watched the broadcast with wide eyes. She ordered her team to locate the boy, but no signal could track him. It was as if the tower had taken him out of time itself. Her mind raced. The question returned again and again. Protect us from what? And now a new question joined it. Why a child? That night the sky returned to normal. The stars were visible again. The moon looked brighter, but something was still wrong. The silence was too deep. The wind carried a strange feeling, like a whisper too low to hear. Animals stopped making noise. Birds vanished into the clouds, and in the oceans, whales sang louder than ever, as if warning something that only they could sense. Deep in space, just outside the energy field, a shape began to form. It was not metal or rock. It was not a creature or a ship. It was something else. A living shadow with no eyes, no mouth, only hunger. It moved without speed yet crossed millions of miles in seconds. It had found Earth, and it had remembered the last time it touched this world, long before humans ever walked on land. Inside the tower, Tay opened his eyes. His body was glowing, and his voice echoed across the dark room. They are coming, and this time we are not ready. The thing that remembers. Sun rose again over a quiet world, but the light felt thinner, like it had traveled through something dark before touching the ground. People stepped out of their homes, slowly blinking at the pale sky, confused by the silence that still hung above the cities. There were no planes, no birds, no engines, only the distant hum of the alien towers that now pulsed like living hearts in every corner of the Earth. In a military control room under Tokyo, General Ross stood in front of a giant screen showing static. The satellites were blind. The deep space radar was offline. Only one signal remained, and it was coming from deep underground in Africa. The signal was steady, cold, and repeating over and over like a warning in code that no one understood. Was no longer the same child. His heartbeat matched the tower. His thoughts felt larger than his own mind. His eyes saw more than the room around him. When he looked up, he could see the stars, but he could also see something beyond the stars, something moving between light and shadow, like smoke drifting through space. Only this smoke had memory. It had a name that no one could speak, and it had been here before, long before humans, long before dinosaurs, when Earth was still fire and ocean. The thing came, it touched the planet, and it fed, and it left nothing alive, only the bones of time. Itself, it drifted away through galaxies, sleeping, waiting, until something called it back. Now it was returning, not because it was hungry, but because it remembered something. It could not explain something about this small world, something unfinished. In Geneva, President Clark met with the remaining world leaders. Everyone looked tired, hollow, like ghosts wearing suits. They had seen the towers activate. They had seen the boy inside. They had felt the air shift when he spoke, but none of them understood what it meant. The Council of Nine had gone silent. No more messages, no more ships. Just their towers standing tall and still like monuments to a war that had not started yet. Lin entered the room holding a tablet, her hands shaking, her voice soft but sharp at the same time. She showed them a scan of the deep field outside the solar system. A shape was coming into view, not with light, not with mass, but with pressure, like space itself was bending around it. The image was blurry, dark, but growing clearer every hour. She looked at the room and said what no one wanted to hear. It is not a ship, it is not a creature, it is a wound in space, and we are bleeding into it. In the forests of Siberia, an old man named Volkov, who once worked on secret Cold War projects, sat alone by a fire. He looked up and saw the sky blink, not the stars, not the clouds. The actual sky blinked for a second, like an eye opening and closing. Slowly he stood up, dropped his tea, and whispered something in Russian, a word that meant God-eater. Meanwhile, Tay walked through a hallway deep inside the tower. The walls around him were made of something older than metal, something alive, with memory. Every step he took opened a door, not physical but mental, and every door showed him a piece of the past. Alien wars, stars, exploding civilizations falling. The thing that remembers had been there too, always watching, always returning when forgotten. The tower spoke to him now, not in words but in pure feeling, and through that feeling he understood the Council of Nine was not here to fight the thing. They were here to hold it back, because no one can truly destroy what does not live. No weapon, no idea can kill a shadow that remembers. Only silence can delay it, only unity can confuse it, and only Earth had done that once by accident long ago, before time began. Now Earth had forgotten, and the shadow was awake again. In a cave in Peru, ancient symbols on stone began to glow as if reacting to the towers. Elsewhere in China, an old monk who had been silent for 30 years finally spoke a single sentence to the sky. They should not have come back. And on a floating station above the Pacific, a human crew of 3 watched as their oxygen levels dropped to 0, even though the tanks were full, and one of them started crying, not from fear but from the memory of something she had never seen back in the tower. Tay placed his hand on a round glowing surface and saw flashes of the future cities, burning oceans, rising voices screaming in a language no human had ever spoken. Yet he felt no fear, only a purpose, one that was not given but born inside him. He turned toward the light and said, I remember you too. And the tower answered by opening the sky. The memory war. The sky opened, but not with light. It opened like a crack in glass, silent, wide, spreading from one edge of the world to the other. No one saw it with their eyes, but everyone felt it deep inside their bones. The air felt thinner, the ground felt hollow, and the wind began to carry sounds that had no source, voices whispering in a forgotten tongue, memories that did not belong to anyone yet. Everyone felt them at once. Soldiers cried without knowing why, children dreamed of stars they had never seen, and old people remembered futures they had never lived. Tay stood inside the tower, surrounded by light. The room around him had no walls now, only shifting colors that pulsed with time itself. His body floated above the floor, his mind stretched across continents, and he saw the other towers awaken, each one choosing someone just like him, ordinary people, touched by something they could not explain. A girl in Brazil, a blind man in Norway. A young coder in Seoul, a farmer in India, all called by the same signal, all lifted into the light without question or resistance across. The world machines began to rise from the towers. They moved like liquid, shaped like animals from forgotten myths. Some looked like wolves, some like serpents, some like birds made of stars. They did not attack, they simply moved, and wherever they passed, silence. Followed perfect silence, the kind that erased everything, not just sound but emotion, thought, even memory. General Ross watched from the command center in Tokyo. He stared at the satellite feeds. Now restored but twisted, the images came in upside down or backward, showing moments that had not happened yet, and others that never would. He realized they were no longer watching reality. They were watching possibilities shifting and twisting as the thing in space came closer. Dr. Lin spoke quickly, her voice low and shaking. The towers are not weapons. They are anchors, and Earth is being pulled out of time. The shadow is trying to erase us, not by killing us, but by rewriting us memory by memory, moment by moment. If it succeeds, we will not die. We will simply never have existed. President Clark held her head in her hands, thinking of the message from the council, the warning they had given, the answer that still echoed what, not who, and now it made sense. This was not an enemy, this was an idea, a living concept that fed on fear and forgot everything. Touched in the mountains of Tibet, an ancient temple began to burn without fire. Its walls cracked, and its scrolls turned to dust as if someone had erased the past. By touching it, monks ran, but their chants faded before reaching their lips, and the stars above the temple blinked out one by one, as if something was consuming the memory of the sky itself. Tay reached deeper into the tower. His fingers touched a glowing orb that pulsed like a heartbeat. It was not just power, it was the memory of Earth, a living map of every thought ever felt by humans, every dream, every song, every fear, and every hope. It was fragile now, cracked and shaking, and he knew if the shadow touched it, the world would forget itself forever. Heard the voice again, not from the tower, but from beyond it, a voice that sounded like billions whispering. At once it did not speak in words, it spoke in ending scenes of cities, breaking people, fading into light, animals standing still as rain moved backward, rivers flowing up into the clouds, and planets spinning the wrong way. The voice was not angry, it was curious. It did not hate, it did not love, it simply remembered and devoured. But something stopped it before, something deep and old and human, a feeling that no other species had, not even the Council of Nine. It was defiance, not of war or hate, but of fading away. It was the refusal to be forgotten. Tay's eyes lit up as he connected with the other chosen ones. Their faces flashed in his mind, each holding a piece of the memory core, each standing now in towers across the earth together. They began to project something into the sky, not light, not sound, but feeling. They sent out love, fear, pain, joy, every human emotion layered into one massive wave of memory, and the sky shook from it. The shadow above slowed for the first time since it was born. It had never been remembered before. In the council's ship, hidden just outside the solar wall, the alien leaders watched in silence. They had seen this once before, long ago, on another world that did not survive, but this time something was different. Humans were not resisting with strength or weapons. They were resisting with identity, with the chaos of being alive inside the tower. Tay looked up, his voice now strong, filled with every memory of who he was and who he wanted to be, and he shouted into the sky, "You do not own our story." And for the first time the shadow remembered fear when the sky bled like the moment Tay's voice echoed into the sky. Something shifted across the earth, not in sound or motion, but in the shape of time itself. Rivers paused in their flow, trees held their breath, and for a few seconds even the clouds stopped moving. The towers glowed so brightly that the stars above faded. The sky turned from blue to white, and then to something else, a color that had no name, a shade never seen before. Above the world the shadow recoiled, not in fear as humans know it, but in confusion. It had drifted through galaxies, feeding on silence, on forgotten things. But Earth was loud. Earth remembered too much, every pain, every mistake, every memory too sharp to swallow. And now these creatures were throwing their minds into the sky, not to fight, not to flee, but to be known, and that made it hesitate in soul the coder named. Jin stood inside his tower, tears running down his face as images of his lost sister filled the space around him. His memory projected into the sky in Rio. The girl named Maria let go of her fear and showed the stars her laughter and her dreams. And the streets she ran through as a child in Siberia, the blind man named Yuri opened his arms and let the tower pour out his memories of music he had never seen, but always heard, and the notes flowed like rivers of light together. They became a net not of force, but of identity, holding earth in place against the thing that tried to erase it. The shadow screamed, but there was no sound. It stretched across the sky, growing larger, darker, colder, but the towers kept glowing, and earth kept remembering. And memory became light, and light became armor. General Ross watched from his control room, surrounded by flickering screens. Some showed the past, some showed the future. None could be trusted anymore except what he felt in his chest. He turned to his soldiers and spoke for the first time, not with orders, but with something else. He told them to remember why they served, who they loved, where they came from. And they did, and as they remembered, the weapons in their hands became warm, not from heat but from purpose. Dr. Lin stood alone in a lab full of failed theories, but her mind was clear. She took a metal sphere from a drawer, something they had taken from the council ship weeks ago, something never activated until now. She placed it on the floor and whispered to it her father's name, her first poem, her greatest fear. The moment she touched the stars and the sphere opened, releasing a pulse that joined the towers and added her voice to the wave of light in the sky above the world. The shadow began to twist, losing shape, trying to pull away, but the memory held it in place. And then the sky bled, not with fire or blood, but with light, rivers of it falling from the stars, crashing into oceans, cities, mountains, each beam carrying a memory from the towers, a moment from Earth's story, the birth of a child, the death of a hero, the smile of a stranger, the pain of goodbye, all of it raining down like a storm of truth. People everywhere stood still, not in fear, but in awe, watching as the world they knew rewrote itself in light. Broken cities healed as memories rebuilt. The cracks, old machines came alive, powered by pure meaning, and the alien towers opened fully, revealing their cores made of light and story. And at the center of it all stood Tay, arms lifted, face calm, eyes filled with 1,000 years of human truth. He looked up at the shadow, now shaking, breaking, and said, "You do not belong here." And the towers agreed, and the earth agreed, and even the sky agreed, and together they pushed. The shadow screamed again, a wave of darkness crashing across the atmosphere. But this time it was met with a wall of memory, so strong that the stars bent away from it. The towers roared with the sound of every voice that had ever lived, and the light pierced the shadow, splitting it apart piece by piece, memory by memory, until all that remained was silence, but not the silence of fear, the silence of peace. And then the towers stopped glowing. The sky turned blue again, the wind returned, the birds sang, and the people wept, not because they were afraid, but because they had. Servaved Tay stepped out of the tower barefoot, blinking at the sun. His body felt light, his mind heavy, but he smiled because he knew it was not over, but it was enough for now. He looked up at the empty sky and whispered, "We remember," and the earth was still. The ones who watched world healed, but the world had changed. People walked through cities that now shimmered faintly under the sun, buildings rebuilt by memory, trees taller than before, flowers that glowed at night, children born during the silence with eyes that seemed to see further than the horizon. And yet above all this peace there was a question left unanswered. Where did the council go, and why did they leave without saying anything? Tay sat alone at the base of the tower, watching birds circle above him. His body was back to normal, but his mind carried 1,000 voices, some still whispering, some already fading. The others, chosen across the world, had returned to their lives, but they were different too. Jin wrote a song with no language. Maria painted skies she had only seen in dreams. Yuri could walk now, his eyes still blind, but his steps sure, as if the earth itself guided him. For 7 days the sky stayed silent, the alien ships. Still gone, no signals, no signs, just the quiet hum of the towers, which had now buried themselves halfway into the ground like seeds. Waiting for a new season, but on the 8th day, the sky cracked again, not like before, not with fear this time. It split with light as smooth as silk, and a single doorway appeared above Geneva. Leaders of the world were gathered already. They had met every day since the event, trying to understand what had happened, how Earth had survived, what the towers had truly done, and what that shadow truly was. And now their answers floated down from the sky in a sphere of silver light as large as a house. Inside it stood 9 beings, tall, silent, glowing, not like gods, not like monsters, but like something in between. They were the Council, and they had returned. President Clark stood before them. She did not bow, she did not shake, she simply asked what everyone wanted to know: why did you come? Why us? Why now? The tallest of the council stepped forward, its face calm, its voice soft yet deep. It did not speak in sound, it spoke in memory. Every person in the room felt the answer, not in their ears, but in their hearts, and what they saw was not just words, but history itself. Stars collapsing, ancient worlds turn into dust, civilizations greater than Earth gone without a whisper, all destroyed by the same thing, the thing that remembers. We watched. The voice said, not because we are powerful, but because we are afraid. We do not fight the shadow. We run from it, and when we find a world strong enough to resist, we try to help from afar. Earth was different. We saw your history, your rage, your fire, and most of all, your refusal to forget. You fight by remembering. That is something the shadow cannot survive. General Ross stepped forward, his voice steady, his eyes narrow. So we were an experiment to you, bait in a trap. The council did not react for a long moment, and then the voice returned, no, not bait. You were our only chance in a desert in Australia. One of the buried towers pulsed and released a soft hum, and in that moment, all across the planet, people looked up at the sky without knowing why. Some smiled, some cried, but all felt the same thing. They had survived something they could not name, and now they were not alone. Dr. Lin approached the council, her mind racing with data and theory and doubt, but her voice held only one word: what? Now the council raised their hands, and from their palms, light flowed, forming shapes in the air, maps of stars, charts of ruins, records of lost wars, and at the center of it all a single burning symbol, the mark of Earth, glowing brighter than any other. The voice spoke again, you are not the end, you are the beginning. Tay felt it too far away from the meeting, sitting under a tree that had grown from the base of his tower. He closed his eyes and saw a path stretching into the stars, and he knew this was not the last chapter, it was the first. The council turned slowly, their forms beginning to dissolve into mist, not dying, not vanishing, just moving away as if they had never been fully real, only reflections of something beyond. And before leaving, they left one final message, not spoken, not written, simply felt: we watched, now you will be watched. The sky closed behind them without sound. The earth remained still, and in that silence the seeds of something greater took root, not in machines, not in towers, but in people. People who now knew their memories could shape the future. We were the signal. The stars above Earth had never looked clearer. The towers had gone quiet, their hum now replaced by the soft rhythm of wind and breath and heartbeat. The council had left their ships, had vanished, their memory drifting like fog, but they had not taken everything. Something had stayed, something deeper than technology, something older than time. It lived now inside the people who had touched the towers and beyond them. It lived inside the world itself. Tay stood at the center of a circle made of stone and root and memory. The place where his tower once stood now covered in grass and soft light. He no longer felt fear or confusion. He felt something wider, something that stretched into the sky and curled through the dirt. Under his feet, he was not the same boy who had walked into that glowing door weeks ago. He had changed, not because of power, but because of understanding. All across the world, others had felt it too. The girl in Brazil now spoke to forests, and they answered. The blind man in Norway played songs that brought dreams to those who listened. The coder in Seoul had written a language machines did not understand, but Stars did their memories had become more than stories, they had become signals, and the universe was listening. One night the sky shimmered, not with clouds or storms, but with movement. Not ships, not comets, something else, pulses, waves, patterns of light that followed no orbit and ignored no direction. Dr. Lin tracked them using the last working sensors, and she realized the truth. They were not signals from somewhere else. They were echoes of Earth, spreading outward into the galaxy, living memories. Moving faster than light, carried by the towers long after they fell silent, she stood in her lab, surrounded by silent screens, and whispered something to herself. A sentence that made no sense, until it did. We were never the message, we were the signal. Far from Earth in the dark space between stars, the signal reached. Something broken, something hiding, something that had almost forgotten itself. And the signal woke it, not with alarm, but with warmth. The signal carried laughter and grief, color and chaos, fear and defiance, the noise of being alive, and it remembered, and with that memory, it turned not toward Earth but away, carrying the signal to others, to places the Council could never reach, to worlds on the edge of ending, giving them sound to follow and a story to believe. Back on Earth, Tai walked through a garden that had grown wild over the ruins of the past. He saw people building not monuments, but homes, simple places, filled with books, music, and laughter. Children ran beside machines that no longer obeyed commands but responded to feelings. The world was quieter now, but not silent. It was alive with meaning. President Clark retired not as a leader of war, but as a keeper of memory. She spent her days recording the old world and the new, not to control it, but to remember it, because now they knew forgetting was the first death, and remembering was the first light one. Morning, Tay woke before the sun. He walked to the edge of a cliff where the sky met the sea. He closed his eyes and spoke a name not his own, not anyone's, just a sound from a dream, and the wind shifted slightly as if listening. He smiled, not because he expected an answer, but because he knew someone somewhere would hear it someday, and they would know. Earth had lived, Earth had fought, Earth had remembered. Looked up at the sky, which no longer seemed above, but beside and inside, and part of him, and he whispered into the wind a truth that needed no reply. We were not saved, we became the saving. In the stars, listen, D&D of story.